Now, can I tell you the stuff that'll make you, want to poop your drawers? Can I do that?
I don't think we could say poop your drawers on a podcast, David.
Oh, sure you can. I was going to go further, but it's not my podcast.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
Calling out tap people. This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
And my guest is David Brauer. I don't know how to describe you, David. Can you tell us why people care about you? Why are you important?
Why do people care about me? Well, I've got about 40 years of sedimentary layers in Minneapolis. So a few old people remember me from the Twin Cities Reader and City Pages. I had a morning radio show on KFAN and then on KSTP in the 90s. People who are younger might remember me editing the Southwest Journal. And people of today, people of the last 10 years or so, it was MinPost and then Twitter. It's Twitter now, really. That's the short answer. It's Twitter.
I think I mostly know you as like Minneapolis Twitter dad of Minneapolis politics Twitter.
Yes, I am an old man now, so I get to sit back and whittle and watch you young ones cavort. Shout out warnings with my knife, waving my knife in the air and going back to my whittling.
I'm old enough to be a dad too. I'm somebody else's Twitter dad at this point.
Okay, yeah, there you go. There's a whole young generation that's going, oh, I hope I can be Wedge Live someday.
So the filing deadline was today. Any surprises? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the one for nerds like us is that Krista Mosang dropped out on the last day, and I guess her partner is running for BET. You know more about this than I do.
Pine Salica, my occasional co-host here. We interviewed Mike Norton together.
Uh-huh.
I like Pine. Pine will be getting the Wedge Live endorsement. I'll announce it here right now.
Well, there's breaking news.
Yeah.
It's a little shady to me that the endorsed DFL candidate drops out on the last day and then her partner jumps in. I mean, I can see the logic on it, but respecting your friendship, but it's like on a pure good government level, unless Krista got this job offer today, it feels a little like a setup.
I can tell you that I just found out about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Krista felt, I've been a strong supporter of Krista. I think Krista felt obligated to let me know.
Mm-hmm.
I'd maybe one of the first people she told. I just found out about it. I don't know when she got the job, but.
Well, it's going to be a shorter DFL sample ballot, which is already going to be pretty short. And the sample ballot can be pretty powerful in races like that. So I believe now there'll be no one listed for BET because Krista was the only endorsee. So voters are going to be flying blind on an office they may not even be aware of, but it's an important office. It has its moments. So so that's the implication of that. I know Steve Brandt, who's an old friend of mine, not necessarily a friend of your podcast.
I had Steve Brandt on the podcast recently.
Oh, very good. I like Steve a lot.
Episode's coming up.
He's labored in the fields. But anyway, for him, it's great news because Krista was probably going to outpoll him with the sample ballot. Now, assuming he can get his message out, he seems like a good shot for one of the two. Samantha Stinson is running independently, and she's the other candidate of sort of the big three there. Not a DFLer, as far as I know, but so the Pine factor is something I've just got to get to know. So
yeah, my conversation with Steve Brandt was pretty good. I like Steve actually. We got along. I helped him with some technical difficulties to start out, and we disagreed on some stuff and agreed on development issues. I think he comes off as pretty pro housing.
He
He's good
is.
on bike stuff, I think, though we
Well,
didn't talk
he's.
about that much.
Oh yeah, no, I've been biking with Steve and Chris Sears of the Strib, who's a close friend of Steve's, and I can tell you they are enthusiastic bikers. And Steve gets a good chunk of the credit for the 40th Street Greenway in Minneapolis. He and pal Steve Jevning really conceived of and pushed that idea. So I don't think the alt transportation community has anything to worry about. And Steve has also been on Click for a long time. I know there's legitimate concern if I was in your shoes or sort of the Twitter aware people about Steve getting the senior caucus endorsement, uh, DFL senior caucus endorsement. But I think that's as much familiarity as anything, and the lack of other choices for them. I would have advised him not to take it. He was not asked. So
He had a lot of old guard endorsements. I'm a little worried he just ends up being the like budget and tax hawk vote on the BET, just as David Wheeler and Carol Becker have been for a while.
yeah,
He's obviously more qualified and he's much sharper than they are, but I'm worried he'll just reprise that role.
I one thing I know about Steve is that Steve is an independent guy. You can ask anybody who tried to edit him at the Strib that he is not managed well, and he's a fierce guy. So I know he has some. I know he has some strong opinions. Personally, I don't find any of them objectionable. Again, maybe you can clue me in from your perspective. He's definitely not a Antifa DFLer, that's for
Right.
sure. But in the same token, he is, and I just want to reassure your listeners that he's not Carol Becker, not in any way. He asks good questions. He probes. Um, if there's a certain left dimension that you're looking for on BET, that's one thing. And I guess I'd have to ask you, like, what are you looking for out of your BET rep that you feel Steve wouldn't give?
So somebody who would be willing to, for example, just agree to increase the maximum levy, like whatever the mayor says he wants, be willing to listen to the city council if the council comes and says, well, there's some things we'd like to do and we don't want to have to cut these programs to fund it. We'd like to increase the levy. Can you vote with us? I'm skeptical that Steve Brandt would ever do that.
Hmm. I guess I would say Steve would keep an open mind on that. I don't think he's afraid of taxes. And in fact, when I talked to him the last time about his campaign, I said, you really need to make it clear that you see government as a force for good. And he agreed. So I can see where you're coming from. I don't know that I have the answer, but I feel good that especially if the strong mayor amendment passes and Jacob Fry wins, that Steve will not be a lapdog for Jacob. In fact, knowing Steve's personality, I would say the more power somebody accrues, the more likely they are to face skepticism from Steve.
Okay, I forgot to introduce what this is. This is the Wedge Live podcast, so I'll insert that at the
What
beginning.
else could it be? What else could it be?
I introduced my guest, but forgot to introduce the show.
That's how it should be, though. I'm the new factor. So
yeah. So how are you feeling? Is this election year stressing you out? It's stressing me out. I don't think I have ever lived through a law and order election. I moved to Minneapolis in 2012, and before that had lived in a place without local politics. So
what I would say, go ahead.
So I am feeling stressed out. Can you make us feel better? Can you make people feel better who are feeling stressed out about this election and the potential outcome?
I can make you feel better in this way. Nobody really knows. I can tell you that if you're inside the bubble, and by this I mean the Twitter bubble that you and I are in, you're probably feeling super anxious because there's a lot at stake, and there's no doubt that the pro-police authoritarian side of Minneapolis politics is better organized than they've ever been. But I guess if I was going to offer rays of hope, I'd offer two. One is that big money has a very inconsistent track record of winning in Minneapolis, so it's not a slam dunk thing. The other thing I would say is if you look at, say, an election like the primary race between Ilhan Omar and Anton Melton Mukes, you can see in that race in the city of Minneapolis, Ilhan just blew him away. Now, that would indicate to me that it is possible that there is a voting base of people like us, maybe, or people adjacent to us, that may be more than you fear right now. You may be worried that there's too few of them, and that's why your candidates might lose. So those are my rays of hope. It could be that the foundation's okay, and it could be that money is not dispositive. Now, can I tell you the stuff that'll make you, want to poop your drawers? Can I do that?
I don't think we could say poop your drawers on a podcast, David.
Oh, sure you can. I was going to go further, but it's not my podcast. They're better organized. There are a lot of people who are, I guess, on the fence about what's going to happen to Minneapolis. Not as, I guess, secure in that we might be, that I am, that Minneapolis is going to be okay, that are just scared and worried, and that they don't see a real alternative, at least a real alternative that they can believe in. That the idea of, reforming the police, defunding the department, even though you and I think we know what that means. To them, it sounds like this untried, untested, anarchistic thing. And, they're likely to show up and vote for anybody that says this last group sucks. Honestly, if you asked me to bet, one of the reasons I don't make predictions on city politics anymore is that 4 years ago, Nikema Levy-Pounds called me out for saying that I didn't think she was going to do very well. And she did fine. She finished fifth, but it was a strong fifth and an influential fifth. And I decided, she's right. Like I talk to people, but it's not a big enough focus group for me to say what's going to happen. The other thing is that, being the depressive, anxious sort who's the core Wedge Live podcast listener, I know that my predictions tend to be pessimistic. If you hear me make an optimistic prediction, you can take it to the bank. So my feeling is that there's a lot of forces that are aligned against the progressives this year, including some of the ways that, either through messaging or action, they've shot themselves in the foot. And when I look around the city, the biggest race is the strong mayor council amendment, because even though I could go through the councils ward by ward, and we will, if that thing passes, then a lot of bets are off. I don't have a good vibe for that. I know that if I was advising people who were against the strong mayor amendment, I would very strongly emphasize Jacob Fry in that argument, as opposed to sort of a more political science, strong mayor, weak mayor thing. Because while I think Fry could well win, I don't think he's very well liked. And I think the idea of giving him more power might be one of the more resonant arguments that opponents of that amendment would have. But anyway, if that passes and he wins, that's sort of your worst case scenario for people like us. When I look around at the council, let's just put the amendment off to the side for a second. When I look around at the council, I don't know if I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic, but I'm less pessimistic than I expected I would be. Partly because, it's depending on how you count. I mean, what do you think? Is it a 9-4 progressive majority on the council right now? Is that kind of where you'd put it?
I might put it at closer to 7-6.
7-6. Okay, that's fair. If depends on the issue.
I mean, a lot of votes don't turn out that way, but it feels like we're right on the razor's edge on a lot of things, and people are flipping at the last minute. So it's really hard to say.
You're right. You create the space for people to take safe votes by what the actual margin is. So let's say it's a bare 7-6 progressive majority, the one that gets Lisa Bender elected council president. Well, the 7, the side that we're on, has a chance of losing a bunch of races, and there's some tea leaves that suggest they might. On the other hand, they are likely to pick up Ward 1, where Elliot Payne may finally end Kevin Reich's career. He barely won 4 years ago. Now, again, don't know how the cops play up there, but there's been a lot of change in Northeast, and I think Elliot's a good candidate. And there was a bunch of money spent on Kevin Reich last time, and it didn't work. So I'd be cautiously optimistic about a pickup there. That gets you to 8-5. And Jason Chavez, who I don't really know, but have watched in Ward 9, him taking over for Alondra Cano would be another switch, because she sort of fell into the Lisa Goodman camp after she doxed her constituents and all that and needed a refuge. So at that point, it's 9-4, and then you have to start consider who loses, right? Who from the progressive 9 loses. Well, in Ward 2, Cam Gordon's ward, there's this Tom Anderson guy, I think that's his name, who progressives I talk to are worried about. But there's also Robin Werlebach. I'm sorry, I don't say these names out. I just read them.
Right.
Who would be more progressive. So I'd say I'm cautiously optimistic about a hold in 2.
I think Yusra Arab in Ward 2 is probably the one to watch. I think she's the Fry candidate, and she's raised a bunch of money.
Well, see, this is why I defer to you on the internet very often.
I don't think Tom Anderson is going anywhere. I think Yusra Arab is the conservative candidate to worry about there. And then you've got,
all right.
Cam and the DSA candidate, Robin Werlebach.
I guess I'm trapped in the DFL convention when I kind of stopped paying attention to that race. Steve Fletcher is obviously a guy I stand for in Ward 3. If he loses to Michael Rainville, the scion of the Rainville family, that's bad. I know that they're worried about money, which is why I tried to help them raise money with Dirty Limericks on Twitter the other day. At the same time, Steve works hard. He's got a good political sense. He's up against a big foe, but I think he also knows where the votes are. So while it might be a coin flip, I don't know. I think Steve has a better chance maybe than other people. So we'll just put that in the hold column because we want you to not poop your pants. Ward 4 is Latricia Vitaw and Philippe Cunningham. Really don't know about that. There's a lot of the Black church is foursquare for Latricia. I think the sort of the Nakima, Kathy Spann type of people, Lisa Clemens obviously are who either are pro-cop or anti-progressive, are allied against him. So that's one where you go, boy, that could be a loss. Just because Latricia is liked by the establishment, she's Black, she has elected experience. I think she has a decent political sense. I personally don't think she's independent of larger forces, which is why I would vote for Philippe. But that could be a loss, and I hope it's not. But I'm just saying for this counting game, that gets you back to 8-5. Jeremiah Ellison versus Victor Martinez, the Trumpy Republican who's running as a DFLer, but has support from the same sectors that Latricia does, and it's a low activity ward. So, it's a poor ward that just doesn't vote as much. So the question is who organizes, who does the better job of organizing? I mean, Victor clearly did better at the DFL convention where he almost won. But again, that's a very low turnout type of affair. And the thing that disappointed me the most is how poorly Jeremiah did, because as the incumbent, he should be able to turn out enough hardcores to have made that more interesting, and he didn't. Now, there's time to fix that. There's certainly a number of mailers you could write about Victor. He's got, from what I'm told, he's got some conservative leanings. He's got a possible Trump vote, all that stuff. I don't know if it resonates in the 5th because I'm a South Minneapolis white guy. But I would say if you're going to, just based on what we've seen so far, I'm going to put it in the loss column. I'm going to hope I'm wrong. I don't have a great deal of certainty there.
You're going to make me poop my pants.
I'm going to make you poop your pants. Yeah. So now you're back to 7-6. Ward 10, Chris Parsons is the and Alicia Gibson, is that the other?
It's Alicia Gibson. So the conservatives are David Wheeler, who definitely can't win, then Chris Parsons, who can't win, and Alicia Gibson, who can't win. I don't see the conservative slate making any headway in Ward 10 at all.
So the only thing I don't know is how much anger there is around the Uptown thing. I will say that, Ward 10 is the home of the people who marched against Nazi bike lanes 4 years ago and have generally always wanted to send that traitor Lisa Bender from Plymouth to the work camps. And they've been so hysterical that they've lost. I know that's your ward. My sense of the Wedge is that the hippie factor and the renter factor is enough where they should, whoever is the progressive who comes out of that, Aisha or Katie, will be a good vote. So you've still got 7-6 there.
I think if conservatives ran a better candidate in Ward 10, they maybe, but I don't see the.
You don't
the
think
ones who are
Chris is a
running.
good candidate? You don't think Chris is a good candidate?
Chris might be the strongest one. I really have a low opinion of Alicia Gibson. I don't think she's really running a good campaign. Also, Chris Parsons is spending $500 a month on a billboard that's covered up entirely by a tree, which is a weird thing to spend money on.
Well, there are always dumb things, and maybe that's indicative. Again, there'll be a ton of money, so whether that matters. But the ward itself seems like a progressive ward, and that's why I think I can be as sanguine as you are that that's going to turn out okay. So then you get toward the ward, just in terms of the number, if it's 11, it goes to 11, that may be the decider, which is Jeremy Schroeder versus Emily Koski, who is a scion of the Hofstede family. Al Hofstede used to be mayor. I know a few people who are her supporters, and they're very down on Lisa Bender and the whole defund thing. Emily did well, but not endorsable well at the DFL convention. She did better in the rich part of Ward 11. Jeremy did better in the poorer part. Emily comes from a political family, almost too political in some ways. There's lobbyist history there. He's going to outspend him 3-1. Has cute billboards. I saw him today for the first time. Or cute lawn signs. Sorry, cute lawn signs. Okay. So to me, that's a tough race. Like that, if you put 11, 4, and 5 in the hopper, I mean, at least based on our math, the math we're doing right now at painful length, you'd have to lose all 3 to lose your majority. I haven't mentioned Ward 12, where I think Andrew Johnson will be reelected, or Ward 13, where I'm so proud of Mike Norton for just being a guy who steps up and gives people a choice down there. Real earnest guy running a really good campaign. I don't live in Ward 13, but I can see it from my house. And I'm so glad that there's a lot of progressive people in Ward 13. They're not all Krabby Patties. And I'm so glad that he's organizing them. I will help him as the race goes on. I think Linnea Palmisano, I met her when she was running the first time, and she was the cool person's alternative to Matt Perry, who
of the Charter Commission.
The Charter Commission. I served with him on a dog park commission, and
he's on every commission.
Yeah, well, Matt's a guy who raises his hand. There's no doubt about that. But it was the first time that the scales fell from my eyes, because they had failed to cite a dog park repeatedly because some neighbor or the other would complain about their property values. So Brad Bourne and John Irwin got another group together, and they said, okay, this time, like, we're going to back it if you guys come up with something and, just dig in. That's why I agreed to do it. My wife had actually been on one of the ones that the park board commissioners failed to do. Anyway, so I got on this one, and everybody was cool. Matt was on it. That's fine. He's, he lives in East Harriet. He's got an interesting perspective. Kept his cards really close to the vest. When it came to the vote, I think the vote was 20-1 for the site that it ended up being cited at, which is what used to be a parking lot with some park vehicles over by Lakewood Cemetery. And Matt voted no because, I don't know, it was too expensive. The bottom line was he lived the closest to the thing. He was listening to the Krabby Patties. He was against it all along, but he ended up, doing this showy thing. And that's when I just said, screw that. I'm done. That's just not cool. So anyway, Linnea was somebody who was an alternative to that and looked attractive. But as time has gone by, she votes 11-1, like often, or 12-1, where she's the one, and Lisa Goodman isn't even voting with her. It just seems like she has too many Krabby Patties in that ward. She's aligned with the former council member Lisa McDonald and the Republicans in that ward, of which there are a lot. She's clearly closely aligned with Jacob Fry. I'm still astounded that she told everybody 4 years ago that she was all set to vote for Betsy Hodges, and then at the last minute decided to support Jacob Fry because of the police killing there. I find her to be very disingenuous, very hard to believe. I mean, one thing you can say about Lisa Goodman is you generally know where she's coming from. She's generally pretty blunt with you. Linnea is one of these people that just, will whine about not getting a postcard for the Minneapolis 2040 thing that's been in the works for like 2 years. It's just, it's just stuff like that that has me really encouraging Mike Norton, but I don't think he's going to win. So there you are. If the 3 races go south, it's 7-6, you're pooping your pants. If the 3 races go okay, it's 9-4, and we have a more progressive council than we have right now. Do we have a strong mayor amendment? I don't know. So that's what I'm looking at.
I'm most worried about Ward 11 and Jeremy Schrader. Elliot Payne in Ward 1 makes me feel good. It would be weird to have a year where Elliot Payne upsets Kevin Reich and also Jeremy Schrader loses in Ward 11.
Why?
Because Reich held on in 2017. He escaped that progressive wave. I don't know. That just seems like Ward 1 is off by itself and maybe not experiencing what the rest of us are as a city, maybe. I don't know how to explain why Kevin Reich is so weak in a year where you would think he might consolidate some support in Ward 1.
Oh, well, again, if he wins, I'll look at that, and if Reich wins, I'll look at that and I'll say, well, cops and the DFL, cops and the city establishment, did their job. They got him in a tough year for progressives. But to me, I think if I'm thinking of the personality of the wards, it seems to me, the people who like me who moved to Kingfield in 1994. I'm a longtime resident, John. Have I told you that? Today we would be, and we have been, moving into Ward 1. That's where we would go. So I see a lot of people who seem more progressive who are moving up there, and that's why I don't have any problem believing Elliott could win. I don't know, but that seems logical to me. Ward 11 also has some young progressive people moving in, and I could be pleasantly surprised. But it's an older, richer, less turnover-y ward, and it was a 3-way race 4 years ago. John Quincy, the incumbent, who I liked everybody who ran in that race. I probably knew Jeremy least of all, but Erica Mauder's a friend. John Quincy's a friend. But you got the sense that John might have been a little bit like Kevin Reich, in that he's, you take some hits, you start to get ground down. You're not as enthusiastic as you used to be. I think the people that I know who are supporting Emily Koski, they're not big money insiders, but they are burning with fire to get Jeremy Schrader out. Mm-hmm. They have a lot of them really dislike the 2040 plan, and I don't know how that would poll in their ward. It's one of the reasons I admire Jeremy for voting for it. It's like he didn't have any time for those people. But
also, like, what impacts of the 2040 plan have come to like have an impact in Ward 11? They don't build hardly anything.
Do you want to argue logic, or do you want to argue feelings? Because
I would think it would have faded from memory by now. Like it's crime and law and order season in Minneapolis politics. We're not talking about the 2040 plan anymore.
No, you're right. I'm just saying that the personality type that led people to bitterly support 2040, even though the effects were de minimis on like their house or the house next to them, is the same personality type that is going to tell you Lisa Bender is a foreigner who should, go back to Plymouth. It's that, I call them Krabby Patties, because they're generally against any change. Now, with the cops argument, unlike 2040, at least at a residential level, the cops change we're talking about is a big legitimate change. And if, you're going to get upset about something, I guess it's more legitimate to me to get upset about that than you do about triplexes next door to you. But it's the same personality type, and it just reinforces when people like that are super motivated, they volunteer, they give money, it can have an impact, and it might mean that, Emily Koski runs better than John Quincy did 4 years ago.
It is depressing that we could potentially, I'm not bullish on Michael Rainville, though he's a real threat. It'd be weird and very depressing to have a Rainville and a Hofstede return to power in Minneapolis.
Well, I've finally lived here long enough. I'm not from here, but I finally lived here long enough where, I know some of these names and I know some of the generations. And, certainly when I moved here, Minneapolis was incredibly incestuous. It was unbelievable how few people from elsewhere lived here. Younger people, I don't know that can necessarily appreciate it, but it's a lot different now. Not as different as I'd like it to be, but it's a lot different. And at the same time, it just like I think about the old Minneapolis, and I think like, well, this is part of who we are. Like there are these old political families now with younger faces. Michael's not so young. Emily is a younger, fresher face. And when you're sitting around at the Minneapolis club or you're dealing with the downtown council, they know they can count on Michael, who works there, or Emily, who's brushed up against them repeatedly. It is a small subset. So I'm not trying to argue against you being depressed about it, but I'm also saying I don't think it's surprising in the context of say the last 10 years, but it's not surprising with a longer view.
It's Wedge Live surprising.
It's Wedge Live surprising. Well, you're a different generation. You're entitled to be surprised by whatever you want.
It's less surprising that it is depressing.
It is depressing.
Yeah.
It is depressing because I honestly, again, just taking a step back from my ideology, Michael is just, I called him a sentient police federation door decal. He's not a dumb guy. He doesn't not like Minneapolis. But he's not in the new Minneapolis. He's not in he hasn't rubbed elbows, in my opinion, enough with younger people. And I don't just mean like younger people like you. I mean younger people than that, more alternative people than that. For all the grief we get about being in our Twitter bubble, I don't think people necessarily realize what we do outside of Twitter. But Michael just feels like he's very tightly in a downtown council, police federation, Anoka County bubble. And I guess that is one reason why I am more optimistic about Steve Fletcher's chances, aside from the parts of Steve Fletcher, the characteristics that Steve has that I really like. But yeah, I guess I'm describing a depressing scenario.
Yeah,
because they have enough influence already. The downtown council has plenty of influence. They just want more.
Yeah, the impression I get of Rainville is probably a very nice person who thinks like, I will serve my friends, the people I've known my whole life, and things will work out for Minneapolis because I have served my friends, because they're all good people. So nobody thinks they're the bad guy.
I can tell you that I don't know if I consider myself a friend of Barb Johnson's, but I like Barb Johnson as a person. I've never really, I've been crossways with her on some things that I've written over the years, but she's a pro. There's a reason she was council president for a long time. She has she can elevate pleasant. I don't just mean like passive, but she can be a professional in the room. And maybe Michael has some of those qualities, but as a guy who used to work downtown and a guy who used to work in the restaurant industry, there's a lot of use to things that I've done, but this is where I get to say I've been around a long time. I really have no time for the downtown bar people who keep talking about how unsafe it is and how we can police our way out of crime. First of all, downtown was a lot less safe 20 years ago, 30 years ago than it is today. That's no comfort for anybody who just moved here or lives there now, but it's true. And, honestly, one of the reasons that downtown is unsafe, to the extent that you think it's unsafe, is some of these bar owners, the places they have, like the poor screening. Now, you can't close downtown off to the patrons who attend those clubs. For one thing, it'd be racist. It's got to be, downtown's got to be a place for everybody. But I so seldom hear people say something like, hey, what if we just licensed a few fewer clubs downtown? That would probably do more for safety than hiring more cops. We've seen ample evidence of more cops downtown not equaling more safety. They've tried it again over the years. But so that's a 180 away from how Michael Rainville thinks, because he's going to go for where the power is. And, that's a traditional political way.
Bring back prohibition is what you're saying.
Or we made, again, I've lived here long enough to know what happened, which is 40 years ago, downtown was kind of wild, at least what's the North Loop now, the warehouse district. It was kind of wild. It was kind of fun. Um, Suddenly, they needed to do something because retail has been dying horribly for 60 years downtown. So once the artists pioneered it, the developers came in, and the city decided, hey, the only way to revitalize downtown is to do amusement park downtown, which is the clubs and Target Center and all that. And it seemed like a really great idea because it was sort of segregated off from the rest of downtown. Nobody really cared to do anything in the office side. And then what happened? People started to move down there, and suddenly you've got your wildest scene next to your richest people, and you can see what's happened since then. All kinds of political static, all kinds of blah de blah. I mean, there didn't even used to be a precinct down there until probably 20 years ago. So it's just some of these things have creeped up, and you would say, like, if you want to make downtown the rich people zone and not the club zone, you're going to have to pick between them. So which are you going to pick? I don't know. I'm just rambling now. But
So
we would put our amusement park district in a different part of the city if we could do it today.
So when you talk to your friends, I'm assuming you have older friends, right? You've got a lot of older friends. And maybe some of them are skeptical of the changes. Maybe they're a little open-minded.
Oh yeah. Oh no. That's true.
So when you talk to them about the public safety charter amendment, creating a Department of Public Safety, taking some money away from armed law enforcement and putting into these alternative programs, like, how do you try to convince them? I'm very curious. How do you bring people over to the good side so we don't poop our pants after this election's over?
So I will say that from the I would call them the cool people my age or older who are not as left as me. Okay, that's the group we're talking about. There's real skepticism that a public safety department ultimately won't just be moving the deck chairs around and adding a layer of government. I mean, they're not like the people on Nextdoor or the Krabby Patties, but they look at this and they go, okay, you're still going to have cops. You're going to have this other person be the department head. The council might have more power, but look at how crazy those guys are. Like, how is this fundamentally going to change anything? And, the answer, to my mind, the argument I make, I don't know if it's successful, frankly, but the argument I make is a couple fold. One is there's no reason on earth why the mayor should have all of the power over the police department. We expect our legislative bodies in Congress to have policy-making power. Now, if there's an incident going down or, frankly, a riot happening, the executive function exists in the mayor to deal with whatever shit's going down, in the short term. But we should totally have the council just have the sort of authority Congress has at the federal level. That argument gets some resonance among the sort of the political science types. The other argument I make is, look, the mayor may say he doesn't think that there should be a staffing minimum for police in the charter, but he didn't do shit about, he didn't do anything.
It's okay. It's the Wedge Live podcast.
Okay, very good. He didn't do shit about getting a charter amendment for that. He didn't, if that's all he wants to change in the charter, but he wanted to change that, he could have done something. He didn't do that because he knew his only route to re-election is to be on a law and order platform, because he doesn't have anybody running from his right, because people on his right really like him. So when I'm talking to people who are close to me but not as left as me, I say, why are we guaranteeing the police federation membership a membership floor in our charter? So I try sometimes to drag the Yes for 4 referendum over just on this idea that here's this one unambiguously stupid thing that we can all agree is stupid. The only way to get it out is to vote for this. And if you have your doubts about the public safety department, we can fix that later. An argument that hasn't gone very far, I think I know why, but I'm disappointed and depressed like you are, is the public health approach to public safety it requires a bit too much explaining for people. And when you do explain it to people, inevitably the response is something like, well, yeah, maybe that'll pay off 5, 10, 15 years from now, but it's going down right now. And it's just, there's too much of a crisis to make. We need a short-term fix. We all agree we love long-term stuff, but I'm not quite buying it. To me, again, the response that I make to my friends is no better time to start than today. We live on the accomplishments and the deficits of previous generations. We have to pay it forward, and we have to start building something for future generations. But there is legitimate skepticism because cops and police have been, generally upheld by white people in this country since we made police, that a different approach, people sometimes just can't even imagine that a different approach can work. But those are the arguments that I make. There's probably better arguments that you could give me, but I don't detect a lot of, among my friends who are more centrist, I don't detect, again, any real enthusiasm for Jacob Frey. In fact, I would say that they're looking for a reason to vote for a Kate Knuth or a Sheila, but they're not quite there yet. They may not even know that much about the candidates at this point. But that's encouraging to me, at least, because we don't have people saying, well, it's Jacob versus these two communists and I'm done running.
Yeah.
So they don't like Jacob. They really want a quality alternative. They worry that the alternative that has been put out is either not going to work or too utopian. So, and I can't guarantee them that it is going to work and that it's not too utopian. So that unfortunately hamstrings me because I'm not a professional political persuader. I'm an ex-journalist, so I admit my doubts.
But one thing we know about the current system is that the mayor ran in 2017 to fix the police department, to fix police community relations. And the police department killed George Floyd and totally exploded once and for all, living up to its reputation for brutality and corruption.
Right. So again, simple, effective message is the mayor failed. Yeah. Unfortunately, the people that I talk to get to the next level, which is, well, why would Kate succeed? Why would Sheila succeed? Now, again, if you're predisposed, the argument would be, well, this guy failed, so we know he failed.
And not just the guy, the system failed catastrophically, and we all lived through it. And somehow we've come to it, and like all the cops quit. Somehow we've come to the conclusion that we got to rebuild that system up that just let us down.
Exactly. And this is why I go back to my argument that I'm making to these friends, where I'm saying the most potent argument we have is, why are we reinflating the Federation? Like, why are we spending $35 million a year on settlements like it's the cost of doing business? Now, I'll tell you, they don't tell me this, but I kind of wonder sometimes if people actually think that is the cost of doing business, that there's no way to police or have public safety in Minneapolis effectively without paying out tens of millions of dollars. I worry that we've gotten to that level of cynicism. But it's clear that, like, St. Paul doesn't do this. That doesn't happen in St. Paul. It's a different city, but it's on the order. They're not perfect, but they're not like us. I heard a really interesting suggestion this past Sunday that I hadn't considered, which is that some mayoral candidates should say, I'm going to appeal to Merrick Garland to put the Minneapolis Police Department in receivership, which would have the effect potentially of changing the police federation contract. It's sort of big daddy or big mommy coming in and wiping everything away. Now, my response to this person was, I can't see Biden doing it because I don't think that's Biden's way. Biden is part of the Democrats who, at least politically, it might be sound to not totally embrace the defunding argument. They're really worried about, losing Congress based on that, and perhaps the presidency in a few years. But it's at least a creative approach, and it gets at, again, the things that are least popular, I hate to say it, about the reform agenda is the actual details of the reform. The thing that's most popular is this attacks the Federation, and you don't really like Jacob Fry that much, and weave those two things together and just message bomb
Right.
that.
You have any thoughts about strong mayor? I sense that you might, as a longtime observer of Minneapolis politics. I haven't talked very much, but my voice is failing.
Oh, it's okay. I can talk. You can tell that. Yeah. I am not doctrinarily opposed to a strong mayor system. I did cover Don Fraser's attempt to get that. It's probably 20 years ago now, which was a real serious run. And Don Fraser had credibility. And at the time, the argument was you don't want to give too much power to one guy. And Minneapolis being liberal by national standards, but conservative within our own community about making change, it didn't pass. But honestly, there's nothing inherently wrong in my mind with having a strong mayor who is insulated somewhat from council micromanagement. Like, I've covered Lisa Goodman for years, and she's, if you ask me who the person who micromanages things the most, Lisa's the person, and Lisa on development, right?
And also loves the idea of strong mayor. She's a supporter of that. So
and I think frankly that's because she's had a good run. I don't know how many more times she's going to run, but her political base this would be a dream for them to only have to buy one person, the mayor, instead of 8 people.
Well, it sounds like you're against it now. You said
I'm describing Lisa's argument. The problem with this amendment, in my opinion, is that I don't have confidence that there will be a true balance of powers. So I would be for a strong amendment that has the council as a strong policy-making body, including the police department, okay? They should totally have their own research staff. I think we've seen, especially over the last year, that the city staff is too controlled by the mayor. They're not honest brokers between the council and the mayor. If they had resources and stuck to policy, could come up with a compelling budget analysis that didn't depend on the finance chief being in the mayor's pocket, and then the mayor would be the one who executes it and doesn't have to take the call from Lisa Goodman to say, you can't have that in my ward. I can see that. I mean, St. Paul basically works, and that's how they do it. It's not radical or strange. Most cities in the country do it. What I fear is that this amendment disempowers the council on all fronts. And the most powerful argument in my mind against it, I don't know what anybody else thinks it is that if you're going to have a super mayor, look at where the previous mayors have come from. They've come from the Silk Stocking District downtown and Jacob Fry. They've come from Linden Hills with Betsy Hodges. They've come from the University Grove with Don Fraser. Sharon was more my area, the 8th Ward, but I think she eventually migrated to the river. She was the exception. But, Art Naftalin was a town and gown guy way back. Stenvig was a Northeast guy, the cop, but that was the whitest area of town at the time. I can't find the last North Side mayor that was elected. I've gone back 80 years. It may be farther back than that. So if you're going to have a super mayor and not a strong council, not a counterweight that has sort of a basic political science thing where every area of the city, no matter how much it participates, gets an equal say, that to me as a guy with a political science BA seems like a bad system. And that's what I mean about people only having to buy one person as opposed to having to try to buy 8, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And the timing has always seemed off to me. Like, we come out of 2020 and immediately we start talking about switching to a strong mayor form of government, as if it wasn't like the mayor's responsibility with MPD. He's already a strong mayor of MPD, and it's being framed by people as a fix to public safety, which is ridiculous.
Right. And again, taking a giant step back from all the detail I can wade into, I mean, when I look at the people who are being dishonest in this race, um, the Michael Rainvilles who have the sign that says he's endorsed by the DFL when it's the senior caucus, just the shitty things that Pauls do. It seems to me it's on the other side. Now, maybe I'm biased, but the Charter Commission, unelected, appointed by a single judge, impossible to remove. There's no doubt that they have done, I guess, legal, but politically really deeply wrong, morally deeply wrong things like pocket vetoing the last attempt to do a public safety amendment. I mean, that's just, I've served a lot since I retired from journalism on appointed committees that advise that advise electeds. We know we don't have an election certificate. And I can tell you, every single one, we're very conscious of the fact that we don't have election certificates, and we try to be like straightforward. And I just look at the Charter Commission, and I it's state law. You can't change who they are. You can't change how it's done unless you go to the legislature. But they have gone way beyond the appropriate and proper boundaries to affect the right of the people to vote on things, and to, like I said, veto some things that people with actual election certificates support. I just think they've overstepped their legitimacy, in my opinion, and it bums me out.
So another thing that bothers me about strong mayor is that the city attorney's office can't really or won't answer questions about what it does. And it seems Lisa Bender, for example, was talking about how this is going to be hashed out, and like we're going to find out what this means just based on how elected officials and staff kind of make it work. Like we're going to find out in real time what the actual effect of it is just based on norms that develop after the fact, which is frightening to me.
I think it's legitimately frightening. I think right now, Jim Rowender, the city attorney, is a captive of the mayor. He's a crony of the mayor, and I don't trust his advice. Now, I've covered city attorneys for a long time. They generally have good relationships with the mayor, no matter what. But I feel like his advice has a political dimension, an excessive political dimension that frankly doesn't manage risk well, which is what an attorney's supposed to do. It increases risk. So you're right. Like I would not, if Lisa Bender's saying basically we got to see how these norms develop, I think we need more formal, more of a formal relationship if we're gonna support a charter amendment. Like, is there somebody on the council side that would be a lawyer, that would be either a check or a co-counsel on what the mayor's lawyer would appoint? So you're right, that gets into some real knobby implementation, but key implementation details for a strong mayor.
Here's an interesting detail. The city charter prevents the city council from taking legal advice from anyone but the city attorney's office. That's actually in the charter.
So we've got a strong mayor legal setup, right?
Yeah. So
that's another example you might point to, along with your police example of, hey, this is what we've got right now, and it doesn't work. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish what you're
I was just going to say the other thing, when it comes to voting on any of these amendments, even though I just talked about like the current city attorney, it is important to remember that the cast of characters changes, and it can change rapidly. So when you're thinking about what you want your city government to look at, you don't want to get overly invested in the fact that it's Jacob Fry now and it's Lisa Bender now and whoever you like and whoever you dislike. I mean, there's a plausible scenario where it could be a 9-4 progressive majority with Sheila as mayor. Like, that could happen. And so the question I sometimes throw at people who are supporting the strong mayor amendment is, okay, do you want to give Sheila unfettered power over the police department? If you do, if you're okay with that, like let the chips fall,
right? Okay,
maybe your vote for the strong mayor amendment is genuine, but I bet you don't. I bet you're voting on today and not tomorrow, and that's not how I would do it.
Yeah, come 2022, you're going to wish Jeremy Schrader was there restraining Mayor Sheila.
Exactly. And so again, in theory, sorry about the sun.
It's okay.
In theory, like I'm melting. I have a broken shade on my skylight, so it can't go all the way down. In theory, an executive who executes the laws and a legislature who makes the laws and is either vetoed or not by the executive it's a pretty good form of government. In fact, if you were going to ask me how I would set it up, I would say generally I'd do Congress the same way, a unicameral elected body and an executive. Those make sense to me. So if I had confidence that the city was doing something like that, I'd be more open. But I don't think that's how they're doing it. And when I look at things like the explanatory note that seems to put its thumb on the scale to downplay just how much power the mayor would have and vastly underplay how little the council would have, it's one reason I'll be voting no on it, and I will not support.
The explanatory note is impenetrable. Like, I follow this stuff. Like, it doesn't explain to me what is changing.
It seems to focus more on, in that realm, it seems to focus more on the mayor's side than the council side. It's not inherently wrong that charter amendments might have explanatory notes, because if you go back and read any charter amendment, almost they're impenetrable to the average voter. Yeah. But the problem is that the thing that was petitioned to get on the ballot did not include an explanatory note. Now, maybe you say the council should have the right to add one, a council and mayor, because they've got the election certificates like I was talking about before. But it feels like cheating, frankly, to add a explanatory note to a citizen-driven charter amendment. It feels like you're adding text, you're adding stuff in. And also, I do think there's a thumb on the scale. I don't trust the city staff. I sure don't trust the charter commission. So it's sort of a crisis of legitimacy. Now, maybe the counter argument would be, well, I don't really trust the activists either. I don't trust the George Soros funded Yes for Four people. But, when I look at the charter amendment on the strong mayor anyway, or the police reform one, I don't know, it seems clear enough to me. And if it's not, that's what we have elections for. We don't need to advertise a certain thing on the ballot.
So I want to rehash something that I heard you talk about on another podcast years ago. It was the Bill Lindeke podcast. Okay. I vaguely remembered. It was about, I don't know if it was about the 2040 plan specifically, but it was about your transformation on your thinking on housing development. Like you started out, I don't think you were a NIMBY, but you were a skeptic maybe? I'll let you characterize it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You and I have talked about this in real life, not so much on the podcast, of course, but here's what I'd say. If in my formative years covering politics, one of the biggest and most successful concentrated power forces were developers. And this was the era where Minneapolis, again, we were panicking, right? We were creating amusement park downtown. And at the same time, we were doing tax increment financing for dumb retail projects and dumb entertainment projects, and sometimes dumb commercial projects. So I think I think just based on my formative experiences, I was pretty skeptical of things that benefit developers. And so I don't always believe that giving capital unfettered means to do what they want, or even subsidized means to do what they want, is a good thing. So I was skeptical of the notion that if we just turned the development community loose on housing, they would fix the problem. I worry about gentrification. I worry about turning us into a playpen of rich people. So those things happened anyway, but that's where I was coming from. And eventually I was convinced by people like you, people like Bill, that the need for housing was so acute that my resistance on principle to sort of political influence was was imbalanced compared to what the need was. The other thing that changed was we stopped subsidizing developers for the most part through tax increment financing. Frankly, the city got successful enough as the urban revolution happened that we didn't have to anymore. And so that took away some of the idea that this was required backdoor dealings at City Hall, required council members who had developers as friends agreeing to those projects that got subsidy that ended up happening. The other thing I think I just got educated on, and I believe, although I guess it's not, people can dispute this, is I've come to believe that more housing, even if it's expensive housing, produces more relatively affordable housing. I'm not going to say it's affordable housing throughout the chain, that more housing becomes reachable. I don't think that in fact, I was just talking to somebody today where they were saying that, we were talking about the 2040 plan for some reason. And, they were complaining about more units in the residential areas, that, they'd be expensive, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, I can't see how fewer housing units or the same number of housing units is going to make housing cheaper, right? Like, I can see how building a big new apartment building that might get a lot of rich people like me to move out of their houses into the rich person's apartment would open up my house to somebody who would move in, and then open up their house to somebody new who would move in. And depending on where we're at with the economy, those houses might be more or less affordable. So a typical long answer from me on why I changed my mind. I just think the housing shortage is so acute right now that, and by the way, the logic of building high density on neighborhood corridors, that's never been a problem for me. That has totally made sense. The thing, like, if you would have asked me 20 years ago, would I have supported the 5 and 6 story units that are going up on Nicollet right now, Nicollet and 42nd, the 4200 block of Nicollet, which is close to where I live? I think I probably would have been in support of them. But now I'm absolutely in support of them, because that's a high density corridor. It's got housing, it's got single family homes on it, but it probably shouldn't, frankly. And so if that's the way we're going to go, when I hear people like Carol Becker say, well, it should only be in areas that, already have a bunch of housing or on big lots or whatever, the major commercial corridors. I mean, I don't agree with that. Nicollet is a corridor, and it should have more housing, and it can have more housing. I think the other thing probably that's happened is as I've gotten older, I've gotten more active in my life. And so I really don't take my car to things that I used to take my car to as much. And that means I'm much more open to a denser city that is not as hospitable to cars. Even though I qualified to be in the DFL senior caucus, and I could be a Krabby Patty and say, cars are the only way that old people can get around. I mean, I'm an old person and I can get around. So all of those things.
One interesting thing I've noticed 2040 related as it pertains to the election is I'm not going to say it's a large strain of leftists, but there are leftists who will trash the 2040 plan as a giveaway to developers. But if you look at the campaign finance reports, you will see that the developers are all funding campaigns against the elected officials who passed the 2040 plan.
If I remember right, at least in 2017, it seemed like there were a fair number of developers who were supporting Lisa Bender. I haven't looked closely at the CAM-FI reports yet, but and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying that was one where I'd heard that argument, and I thought, well, maybe they just supported her because she was going to win and she's the council president and all of that. But yeah, I mean, this is something either I or more likely other people will do, looking at who's giving the money where. But yeah, you're right. Like, again, I just come to believe that in certain contexts, being pro-development is not being anti-progressive. I'm not saying in all contexts, I'm not saying every politician, but I think we have seen a way that this has happened. And I understand people are worried about gentrification. I get it. I've seen it happen. But at the same time, I still believe if you don't build those places, they're still going to gentrify. Like it's if I could stop gentrification by stopping development, I might be open to it, but that is not how it's going to go down.
Right. Okay, so we have come to the end, David Brauer. Thank you for spending an hour and 5 minutes with me. For the final question, I'm going to ask you for advice. What question should I be asking my podcast guests as the final question? What's a clever closing question that I could be asking them?
Oh man. Well, it depends on who your guests are, right? Are they all
It's a lot of candidates. It's a lot of candidates. I have Erica Mauder coming up on Thursday. So if you have
Erica's great.
What would be good for Erica Mauder?
But give me a second. You're putting me on the spot.
I'll cut out the dead air. Don't worry.
Yeah, you maybe should cut out the dead air. But I was having some fun with Erica. Oh, ask Erica what she thinks of the Star Tribune opinion, the editorial board. That would be the last question to her.
Which one? Oh, just the editorial board in general, not a specific opinion. Okay.
Oh, well, there's a specific opinion I'm thinking of, but we'll see if she bites on it.
Okay. I'm thinking 2017. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah. We're thinking 2017, and we're thinking the 2017 endorsement. Now that's Erica specific, and that may be a question you want to ask first because it's just a yummy, delicious question. Time has proven Erica right on that.
Yeah.
But I think the issue that's on a lot of people's minds right now is, I think a fundamental question for everybody is, how are we going to govern a city where more and more people feel like they have nothing to lose vis-a-vis the police department? Like one of the things I think about a lot is who is the best mayor or the best council to convince or to help people who feel like they're at the bottom of society and have nothing to lose. They maybe been the victims of police brutality or societal discrimination, to buy in to a safe, healthy Minneapolis. Like I look at Jacob Frey and I say, he's got nothing to say to anybody who feels like they have nothing to lose in Minneapolis. And I believe over the next 4 years, we're going to have more people who feel like they have nothing to lose because of climate change, the fact that we can't reform the police, all kinds of things that could go wrong. So which mayor gets us out of that box? Which council member gets us out of that box? How do they get us out of that box? When you talk about needing hope for yourself in the city, I mean, I'm asking the same question. I'm saying, like, we are trapped in a cycle where the authoritarians are emboldened and the anti-authoritarians feel like they have no recourse. How do you, candidate X, get us to a place where we have enough legitimacy to be able to govern each other effectively, to be part of a common polity? And I just want to hear what they're thinking. Maybe maybe it becomes a utopian idea that people won't buy, but just like, how do you get these people? How do we enrich more of society in this city? Jacob Frey is not about that. Jacob Frey now is about consolidating that block of his power. That's what I want to know.
That's a good question. That's a deep, thoughtful question. I was worried you were going to do one like, what's your favorite book?
I hate those questions, although sometimes they can get good answers. The thing about interviewing, I don't know if I was the all-time greatest interviewer when I was a journalist, but the thing about interviewing is, and you do it well, is, there is no formula. You got to kind of, surf it like a vibe. I mean, it helps to prep. It helps to have questions that you've thought of ahead of time. But, sometimes you just spot an opening and you just kind of have to jump at it. You do a good job. I mean, I was thinking about this when I was getting ready to come on. For a long time, I wrote a lot about the city because I felt like nobody else, there wasn't a critical mass of other people who were writing about the city. Not that I alone could save the city, but I felt like the coverage in the Star Tribune was pretty weak, and the alt weeklies, one or the other, depending on the time, wouldn't be that interested in politics. And what's great about today is there's guys like you, there's guys like Tony Webster, Ashley Fairbanks put up campaign finance reports that people could just look at if they wanted to. Now, there's a next level where you actually, instead of just putting that stuff out there for people to start to analyze, you actually do some analysis and guide people. But, this is the best time, in my opinion, for people covering the city at a micro level. I know old fuddy-duddies like me might say, well, you need a better performance out of the objective mass institutions of journalism. You always do. You always do. But there are people like you and me, frankly, but you more than me now, who are free to admit their biases. They don't have any great hang-ups about not being objective. But, I had a whole staff. The reason the Southwest Journal was good was because it attended all the neighborhood meetings. The Strib didn't do that. Nobody did that. You do that now to the extent that you can I have a deep respect for that. I have a deep respect for the deep knowledge that Tony Webster has and that other people have about the city. And that when you show something like this is the best journalism, when you make a conclusion, you're also linking to something. And you're showing a piece of video. Now it may be edited to show what you want it to show, but that's okay. We journalists do that the same way. So again, I'll just leave you with a thank you and a ray of hope. The fact that you can do it, the fact that Tony can do it, other people, the Reformer, Sahan Journal are doing it. There's other citizen activists who I'm sure I'm forgetting. That's a great thing, and I thank you because I've sort of taken one step out, and it's great to not have to worry about that part of it being filled.
Well, thank you, David Brauer. That was a wonderful way to end the show, being very nice to me. You should have your own podcast. You talked for so much during this episode. I enjoyed it. I think people are really going to love this episode. So you should have your own podcast.
I hope so. I don't know if it coheres well when you go back and look at it, but I appreciate that. I've had my own podcast, and honestly, basketball with my friend Britt Robson. Honestly, I just couldn't keep up the producing content all the time. So like if I could produce one thing and then come back when I feel like it 9 months later, that might be the thing to do. So again, I have respect for what you're doing. I love being a guest. Thank you for asking me. That's about as far as it's going to go.
Okay. My guest has been David Brauer. I'm John Edwards, your host. This has been the Wedge Live podcast. Thank you.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.